I spend, don't tell my wife, I blew out my knee. Basketball career was over. I wasn't going to go to college playing basketball or anything, but I had two choices. And one was, do I want to go to college? Do I want to go to fire school? Or do I want to become an entrepreneur? I chose the latter. I became an insurance agent.
Logan is definitely the youngest one here, so I'm curious, Logan, do you know what a Palm Pilot is?
I have no idea what that is.
Let's look at one of the most successful modern day business owners, Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett. Those guys read like 500 pages per day.
Cheers. Welcome back to the Doughboys podcast. I'm your host, Logan, joined today by my lovely, studly co-hosts, Flipping It with Cisco and Formosa McGill. Today, we are also joined by a special guest who probably needs no introduction. We got Chris Garrett over from Clear the Shelf. Chris has been teaching people this game for a long time. Personally, I learned a lot. Yeah. He's got the OA challenge, putting out a lot of great content, got a lot of tools, blog, all that. So we're super excited to dive in all that. And Chris, we're excited to have you here as a guest. Thank you so much for joining us. Would love it if you can start us off. Just kind of give us your background and how you got into this industry.
Do you want the long version or you want the short version?
Let's go with the long version.
All right. So I would say that my flipping story starts in 8th grade. I don't know. I've always been a little bit off and I just thought a little bit different than most kids. But in 8th grade, we needed to make money. And one of the ways that we decided to do that was we were going to flip pizza at school. I went to a fairly small school. We didn't have like a cafeteria or anything like that. So Monday through Thursday, they contracted lunches from the hospital across the street that you could buy. Okay, garbage food. You guys know what hospital food tastes like. On Fridays, the hospital did not serve food. Okay, and so we saw an opening, and we said, you know what? Let's buy pizza and mark it up and sell it on Fridays. It was an absolute hit. We negotiated rates with the Pizza Hut, our local Pizza Hut, down to about 50 cents a slice. We sold it at $1 a slice. After we got that going and we started seeing the numbers work out, we were like, you know what? These kids, they also need some ancillary products. We need to upsell these kids. And so we started carrying Capri Suns and those Hug juice boxes, crackers, candy, all that stuff. We had my 8th grade teacher, she gave us this closet in our room where kids would come and they'd line up outside the door in the hallway, and we would deliver pizza to the rooms, and then if they wanted anything, it gave us an opportunity to actually advertise. We'd say, hey, if you guys want any crackers, cookies, chips, etc., you just come on up to our room, knock on the door, and we'll let you in, and we will sell you guys the other stuff as well. Every day there was a line, and we could sell that stuff Monday through Friday, not just on Friday. So it was a little bit more of a constant stream of income. And we ended up making enough money that we could take our 8th grade class trip. I went to a very small private religious school where 8th grade graduation was a really big deal. And we always had an 8th grade class trip. So we took the 9 of us from Ohio to Niagara Falls. All expenses paid. Everything from the van to the hotels to the meals out, entertainment, it was all taken care of from what we did that year. We were also able to raise enough money that we redid our gym floors, and we bought new basketball hoops and backboards for our gym because the next year I started the basketball team at the school. It was a really fun learning experience, being able to see that come in and start from nothing. And then after that, I took a bit of a break. I worked a regular job pushing carts at a Giant Eagle. As I got close to 18, I blew out my knee, and so basketball career was over. I wasn't going to go to college playing basketball or anything. But I had two choices, and one was, do I want to go to college? Do I want to go to fire school? Or do I want to become an entrepreneur? And I chose the latter. I became an insurance agent, so an entrepreneur light, if you will. I was a 1099 contractor for my grandfather. I worked in his agency. I sold insurance straight commission. I didn't get, a little bit on the side like a lot of grandparents might do for their grandkids. and I started from zero. I wasn't handed a book of business or anything. And the reason I did that is because I knew that I could go and I could start another business, but with insurance, it gave me renewal income. So if I sold a policy once, as long as the person renewed their insurance, I would make that commission in perpetuity. And so that's what drew me to that business. But about 6 or 7 years into that business, the insurance industry was very slow to change, very stagnant. A lot of old white guys who don't want anything to change at all. And I was like, hey, we need to be blogging. We need to be YouTubing. We should have social media. Like, we need to be at the forefront of this. And everyone was like, well, it's going to have to go through these legal departments, and not really sure you can do that. And so I was like, all right, fine. I'll go find ways to make money on the internet myself. And so I found drop shipping. And I tried that on eBay for a while, and that led me down the path to Amazon and selling on FBA. That made a lot more sense to me. It made more sense to me to outsource the logistics rather than have to stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning fulfilling all these orders that people have made on eBay and stuff. And so after, it was a podcast that actually introduced me to Amazon. It was Pat Flynn of the SPI podcast. He had a guest on, he had Jessica LaRue on as a guest. But then I found Chris Green, and I found FBA Today, and I found all these groups, and I went hard. I had no shame. I would literally reach out to people and say, hey, can I come and clean your warehouse, or come and work at your shop and learn from you? And like, I'll fly myself out there. I'll do the grunt work, and I networked as much as I could, read as much as I could, but the information was a lot farther and fewer between than it is now. And so a lot of it was trial and error. And because of that, because the information was not as gratuitous as it is now, that's what led me into, hey, you know what? I should probably start recording some videos, creating some content, helping people out, because all these people helped me. So
I want to backtrack to your first business in the 8th grade. So I'm curious, was there anyone that was like kind of guiding you through that process, or is it just you and other students kind of taking that on?
I mean, we did have an advisor. Our 8th grade teacher, Mrs. McDermott, best teacher I ever had. She was an advisor to us, and she would answer questions. She made us do the legwork. She made us do the figuring things out. Like, I had to do the book, so I was like the chief salesperson and the bookkeeper. It was a heck of a lot easier accounting than having an inventory-based business, I'll tell you that. But she'd help along the way. We had to do the negotiation. She threw us in the deep end.
That's cool. I went through a program in high school called CEO, Creating Entrepreneurial Opportunities, and it's kind of like that. There's a position, they're called the facilitator, call them the teacher or whatever, but basically they're there to guide the students, make sure that they don't drown, make sure they're heading in the right direction, but the students have to do all the actual work of running the business and doing everything. So it's really cool.
This wasn't like part of the 8th grade curriculum, right? This is just something you started up on your own, and your teacher was just guiding you through it?
Yeah, it was.
That's pretty crazy. It
was essentially because, like, at the beginning of the year, they're like, hey, listen, we're going to have 8th grade graduation. Here are the things that your parents are going to need to pay for. I'm going to be quite honest. There was 2 or 3 of us out of 9. Our parents weren't going to be able to pay for all the stuff.
Right.
I was raised by a single dad. The first time I had a pair of name brand shoes was when I could buy them on my own. Like, we got to figure out a way to be able to help, like, not only myself, but a couple other kids in my class who, like, aren't going to be able to go on this trip, aren't going to have money for robes or gowns or whatever they are when you graduate, and you're supposed to pay to, like, give your parent a flower during graduation. There were all these little fees that were going to stack up, and so we had to figure out a way to pay for it.
I love the part where you said you were negotiating prices with Pizza Hut.
Yeah, I love that. You were doing wholesale from a young age.
Right. The manager was great. Like, I don't know if he just had a soft spot for kids or what it was, but like, he came in an hour early on Fridays to make the pizza. Wow. And he was, they were willing to basically break even on the product. And like, I didn't really know what tipping was back then. So when they delivered the pizza to the school, I'm getting like 15 pies delivered, and I'm giving the guy like a $10 tip. And now that I look back, I'm like, oh man, I kind of feel bad about that. But yeah, it was a great experience.
All right, Chris. So you have a bunch of content out there on your platform and a bunch of other people's platform. One thing that I've gathered from just listening and intaking everything that you've kind of said, one, you're a hustler, and two, you're very studious. You're very curious about things and a little bit of a bookworm, and that's obviously helped you a lot throughout your journey and your entrepreneurial journey. Have you always been studious and a bit of a bookworm? And then a follow-up question is, what are you currently reading now?
I have not always been studious. I was at an early age. Schoolwork came super easy to me, and when I was in grades like kindergarten through fourth grade, I was kind of an outcast. I was a little bit different than most of the kids at my school, and so I just did my schoolwork, read, played a little bit of Nintendo, and that was about it. Once I went to private school, I learned about like making friends and things like that, and studies kind of went to the back burner. Again, school usually came fairly easy to me. The curiosity thing is, when I was a kid, like my dad, he worked nights. He worked from like midnight to 7 a.m. and then he had a second job from like 8 a.m. to 3. And so, like, if I asked my dad a question, he'd be like, "Hey, you need to go look that up." And so I would, if I had a question, I would literally go and read the encyclopedia about whatever I was curious about, because my dad was just tired. He was either sleeping or working or, like making dinner. If I wanted my questions answered, like I had to use, the version of Google I had available to me at the time. And so I was, right. And I've always just been curious. I want to know what people are talking about. I want to know what they're thinking. I want to know, how things work. And I don't know, it's just kind of instilled in me all the time. And I've passed that on to my son as well. Like he asks, like we were at the eye doctor before we hopped on this for a couple hours for him and for both my boys. And my youngest, my 9-year-old, he probably asked about 32 questions while we were there. And so like, it's great because I want him to stay curious. So, and then what am I reading right now? I'm reading like a 75-year-old book right now. I'm actually reading 2 pretty old books, but there's a guy, a Founders podcast, who breaks down biographies of people who have been, I don't know, Michael Jordan, John D. Rockefeller, Steve Jobs, all these guys. He did a biography on David Ogilvy. Sorry, I had to look at the book to make sure I got it right. He did a biography on David Ogilvy. Ogilvy talks about a guy by the name of Claude Hopkins, who's kind of the godfather of the modern copywriting industry. And so right now I'm reading Scientific Advertising by Claude Hopkins, which I think was written in like 1923. When he wrote it, the company he worked for took the manuscript because it was supposed to be an internal document, and they locked it away. They're like, nobody can read this, nobody can have this. And then in like the 1930s or early 1940s, after Claude Hopkins passed away, someone finally got it and published it. And so I'm reading that. And then I'm also reading, I don't have it on me, it's in the other room. I'm reading another book. It's the guy who's kind of the godfather of the self-help movement. I bought his book. You can only find it on Amazon like every 3 months or so, and it's anywhere between $85 and like $300 depending on who lists it. And so I just happened to grab it while it was like $85. And so I'm reading that as well.
Are you gonna flip it for 300 when you're done?
I was thinking about it. Yeah, I was thinking about it.
The self-help movement.
It'd be like the guys who were around before Dale Carnegie and before Tony Robbins and all those guys.
Gotcha.
It was like there were kind of 2 schools. There were the snake oil salesmen who are like, "Hey, take this tincture and you're gonna, be able to make $1 million and your hair will grow back." And then there were the guys who were like, "No, it's really more about your thoughts and your mindset and things like that." And so I'm reading his book. And then I have like 6 daily readers as well. So I read like
Daily
they're just
readers.
they're like 1-page books.
Okay.
So I've got the Daily Dad, and I've got the Daily Stoic, and I've also what else do I have? Robert Greene's The Daily Laws.
This is said of a lot of people throughout history. Like, I know this was said less specifically of George Washington. They said he was such a wise guy because he was reading constantly. Like it's a consistent sign of someone who's studied, learned, they're wise, and they know what they're doing. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, if you look back through history, you look at all the guys who have really crushed it. They've been massive readers. I mean, let's look at one of the most successful modern day business owners in Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett. Those guys read 500 pages per day. And yeah, it's insane. If I could, I would do that.
Well, that's part of outsourcing, right? Get back time so that you can read 500 pages a day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's still hard to do regardless if you have all day.
Yeah, that's a lot.
You got to get fast.
Even if you outsourced everything.
Yeah.
Audible at 2 times speed. Got it.
Right. All right, Chris, so let's fast forward to you starting your Amazon business. Do you remember what year you got started?
2011 is what sounds like the right.
So
time.
you mentioned there being a lack of education out there and people putting out content. There's so much more out there today, and I would imagine there was probably a lack of tools too.
Yeah, the only thing that was really around when I got started was Scan Power.
Okay.
I think Profit Bandit was around.
Okay. Used that one when I was starting.
Wait, was Keeper around yet?
If it was, I didn't know about it, and I don't think so. Well, but Camel was there.
Okay.
But
It's
not good.
That's just insane. That's just you're just impressive even with that alone.
Yeah.
So you're almost as old as that dinosaur head.
Yeah, almost. But yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of tools, and they're definitely weren't coming out at the rate they are now. Every time you turn around, someone's got a new tool available.
So what did that look like for you then, running an Amazon business?
Amazon seller app, and so there were
hold on, you were doing shipments on the seller app?
No. I mean, you did that inside Seller Central back then.
Oh, okay.
All right.
But Seller Central.
Yeah, but I was sourcing just with the seller app, and I just be oh, this is ranked 50,000. I'll try that. That's really all you had to go on for the most part, especially.
Did they always have sales rank? Since I don't know when that came out.
Yeah, it's been around ever since I can remember.
Okay.
And you were doing all your shipments on Seller Central.
Josh is so
at that as a warehouse manager, that's just frightening to me.
I didn't even know what. I mean, Scan Power had did they have the ability? I think Scan Power may have had the ability back then to do shipments. I mean, that was too expensive for my blood back then.
So were you Retail Arbitrage when you started out, or how'd you begin?
It was a completely different ball game back then. Okay. I mean, it was the Wild West. So I started out thrifting. You could call it retail arbitrage. I really was trying to only sell new products. I'd find new board games. I'd find unopened adult diapers, unopened software, unopened dead stock, and we could sell that as new. And if someone complained, you could actually reach out to them and say, hey, you know what, I'm sorry, let me refund your money. Can you remove that negative feedback? All kinds of stuff. And that was all fine, And
it's the Wild West.
The Wild West.
It was the Wild West. So we would sell a bunch of stuff from thrift stores. We also did books. We got into bulk books for a while, and that was mostly where the beginning was.
Man, did you have a software for books when you're in the book business, or was there still nothing out yet?
So I did not have the money. They actually had Palm Pilots. You guys remember those things?
I remember Palm
Actually,
Pilots.
I do know what you're talking about. My dad.
Okay, so they had these Palm Pilots that you would hook up to your computer, and it would download the Amazon catalog. Okay, and then you could go scan the books, and it would tell you based on the last time you updated the software on the Palm Pilot, what rank it was and stuff like that. When I was out scanning books, it was mostly just the Amazon seller app. And I'd say, okay, well, is this under 1 million in rank? All right, we'll go ahead and give it a shot because I'm going to spend 50 cents on it. And then I hired a book sourcer for a little while. I met this kid. I was flipping MacBooks from Craigslist to eBay. And I met this kid who was buying up all the MacBooks from his buddies in high school. I bought 1 and then 2 and then 5 from him, and I'm like, "You're sure you're not stealing these, right?" And he wasn't. It was all above board. But I ended up hiring him as a sourcer for me, and he would just go and he would scan all the Goodwills and get me all the books, and we'd send those in, and then we flipped over to bulk books.
That's great. I want to touch on this Palm Pilot thing just because I haven't heard that phrase in so long. And Logan is definitely the youngest one here. So I'm curious, Logan, do you know what a Palm Pilot is?
I have
And you know
no
how it
idea
looks
what
like?
that is. No.
So think of a T9 calculator, right? Right, the little scientific calculator.
Yeah.
Cut off the keyboard, and then you had a stylus that you could touch a keyboard with on the screen, but it was super tiny, and half the time you had like maybe a 30% accuracy rate with the little stylus to hit the right letter.
They sound like dark
remember it.
times.
But,
Dark.
It
and
was-
they didn't even
it
have
It was
a
like
gigabyte
every
of
dad
storage.
had it when they were like playing games on the toilet. That's what it
Yep.
was.
Yeah.
You just hear this
I
tap,
just
tap,
remem-
tap, tap.
Yes,
tap,
that's
tap,
all I
tap.
remember is my dad on the toilet playing that. That's wild. I forgot about that memory.
That brings
That
back
is
good
a
times.
callback. Wow. And you were using that for business. That's crazy.
Well, I didn't have the money for one of those. Those things were like $600-700 back then.
Right.
You
They
know,
were expensive.
but yeah,
as most
some-
technology was.
Yeah, some people who were really, were really successful at Amazon, they had those. They would hook them up to a scanner, and they had these Nintendo, like, you remember the Nintendo glove? They had these scanners that looked like a Nintendo Power glove. That you wore it on your hand, and you could scan with the Palm Pilot in one hand, and you could go pretty fast. Some of these guys were crushing book sales and Goodwills. But I didn't like that grind, and that's why we ended up pivoting.
What'd you pivot to?
First, bulk books. There was a local used bookstore called Half Price Books in Columbus, and we went to one of their warehouse sales and talked to one of their managers. And my wife actually closed the deal. She was like, "Hey, you obviously have extra inventory. Could we start buying Gaylords from you?" And then once we found out that we could buy unpicked over Gaylords, we started going and picking them up 3 at a time and putting them in the garage and processing them and shipping out books to Amazon.
Do you happen to remember what you were paying for those Gaylords?
It was expensive at the time. It was about $75 a Gaylord, which I think is probably a little overpriced. If I had been able to buy a semi-truckload, I would have gotten them cheaper. Out of every Gaylord, I was probably making $500-600 in profit.
That was my guess.
Yeah.
My guess. Yeah.
And and then maybe another $50 I would make in books that I would actually take back to Half Price Books and sell them like at the retail store.
Right.
And then I'd turn that into a gift card, and I'd buy 1 or 2 textbooks that I could sell for $50 profit or something. So we were just trying to take Half Price Books for everything we could.
Nice.
Making value on every turn.
Yeah.
So how long did you run that bulk book operation?
A year or two until Amazon came out with long-term storage fees. We used to have unlimited storage forever. Okay, free unlimited storage forever. And so I think we had 5,000 or 6,000 books in stock. Amazon comes out and says, "Hey, we're going to have this new long-term storage fee. We don't want things there over X amount of time." And the first month, I get hit with an $800 storage bill. And so we started pulling back our aged inventory, and then we flipped from books to like actual retail arbitrage at real retail stores.
So that was the thing that pushed you into RA. Was
Yeah.
$800 in storage fees.
Do you
man.
remember? Yeah.
That's like a park ticket to Disney World for your whole family. That's nuts.
Yeah, right.
That's a lot. Do you remember
Just for
like,
one
when
day, though.
around that was?
I don't know. It was like the same year we bought our first house, so I'd have to go look it up. It's been a while.
Like 2014, something like that.
That sounds about right.
So then you transition into RA, and what did that business model look like for you?
I mean, it was just me still. I didn't have any shoppers until I moved out of Ohio. But I I had like 3 or 4 stores that I knew how to crush. Meijer. I lived in the Midwest. I lived in Ohio, so there was Meijer, Walgreens. I was pretty good at Target. It wasn't my favorite, but I could do okay with it. And then what was that other store? There's like Big Lots and Ollie's, and a couple of others. But I mean, I made a living at Meijer and Walgreens, and the biggest thing for me is that I came from a sales background, and so I would go shake hands and kiss babies and try to make as many friendships as I could. And so I always knew, like Meijer, they had 50% off clearance sales all the time. And so I had a heads up when that was. At 4 or 5 different Walgreens locations, I was able to source in the back before they put the clearance stuff out. He's like, hey, I'm not going to mark this stuff. You come in, tell me what you want. We'll negotiate a price, and then you just get it out of here, so I don't have to put it up on the shelf. That worked so well for us.
Yeah, when it comes to RA, those relationships, yeah, exactly, connections. Those relationships come in.
So important.
Exactly, so important.
Yeah.
Like, you can literally build a business off of just relationships like that. I mean, we had a guest previously who I guess had a really good relationship with, like, I think it was a beauty store with one of the managers, and he told us that one day he was able to order $100,000 worth of product from this beauty store.
That's
just
awesome.
because they ordered it specifically, off of their catalog on their end for it to come in, and then he would just come pick it up and run the transaction. And then it all went tumbling down because they had a change in management, and then I guess that manager didn't like money.
Yeah, that happens. That does that. It was funny because there'd be 2 or 3 Walgreens where I'd bring in coffee and donuts for the employees and say, hey, can I talk to the manager for a minute? And they'd be like, absolutely, you're going to make my life easier. I'm not going to have as many employee hours. It's going to make our sell-through rate look better. It was a win-win for them. And then there'd be other managers who are like, what are you going to do with this stuff? And I'm like, I'm going to sell it on the internet. And they're like, no, like no one should make money on the internet. And I'm like, okay, boomer.
Boomer,
So yeah, it was just getting the relationships was, 1, a function of not being scared to ask, and 2, a function of just asking enough people.
Yep.
And so yeah, it was good, and it's easier, I think, than many people make it out to be. So because I'm a naturally inquisitive person, I just start asking questions. Hey, what's one of my favorite questions at drugstores to ask managers is, hey, how much do you guys lose out the front door and out the back door? Because you'd be surprised in some higher crime areas, and this is before like all the news about California and all that stuff, but in some of the areas where I lived in Columbus, they would break even or be at a small loss because of theft on the retail side, and the only reason that the drugstores were actually open is because they actually made money on the pharmacy. And so you start off with questions like that, and then you can take that knowledge and it makes you more informed for the next manager, and you can start asking even better questions. And so
leveraging the knowledge.
Yeah, I actually just did this on Tuesday. I used the same technique, and I went and bought some fireworks for the kids. And in Florida, we have these tents that entrepreneurs put up and sell fireworks out of what feels like the back of a pickup truck. But these guys are spending $30,000-$50,000 in inventory and hoping to get a return on that money. I had the guy give me his entire business plan, even tell me who his supplier was by the time I was out of there.
Wow.
He just gave that away?
Yeah, I just started asking questions, being nice, talking, and yep, all of it. I know exactly where to go. I know the licensing process. I know everything. I could start my own fireworks stand next July 4th.
What's that? There's this guy. I think Logan. I think his name's what? Chris Voss, the negotiating guy.
Chris Voss, the negotiator, FBI negotiator.
Yeah, exactly. He talks about this in his book, and he talks about this in he had like a mastermind on his master class,
Yep.
And he talks about that how people would really, if you give them the opportunity, they love to just talk about what they're doing in themselves. They love to, in a way, share it with someone because they're excited about it, so they want to share that excitement with someone. And that's all it is just kind of roping them in, letting them talk, giving them, labeling them, saying, oh wow, that's awesome, and then they just continue feeding it to you. It's crazy.
And it helps if you're genuinely curious. Like I really am genuinely curious, but I also walked away with like another business that I actually was talking to my kids. I was like, hey, if I open a fireworks stand, would you guys work it next year? Because it is like 111. So I wanted to see if I had some free labor or not.
Right. It's hot down here.
Yeah.
But I mean, you gotta have genuine curiosity, and you also have to have business know-how. Like I can be genuinely curious and not know anything about books or how to manage money, and it's wasted. My curiosity is wasted.
Yeah.
Right. I was interested about your Walgreens. I've never heard anything like that, of you getting to go in the back and buy stuff before they put it on the counter. That makes sense, because then they don't have to go through the business of marking it down and all that. Are you still doing that, or is that not as common anymore?
Not anymore. So there was a time in Columbus where, as I was like right before we moved away, where they were putting a stop to it at a corporate level. In Florida, I didn't really ever do much retail arbitrage, except for a few times when we'd find a really great product and just we didn't have a choice. Well, that's not true. In the first year in Florida, I did a bunch of retail arbitrage. I hired someone. We went out and we'd fill up a trailer. But then from the second year on, I was like, no more being on the road. I need to be behind my keyboard, behind the safety of my desk, and do everything from there. But if we hit on a hot product, I've got somebody who will go out and do some retail arbitrage for me, and I will as well. And I still do the same thing. When I go in, I'll talk to a manager, and like we came across this product that was super hot maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and one of the managers was like, after talking to him, he's like, oh, well, I'll tell you exactly what stores have exactly what you're looking for with our inventory management tool rather than the one that's online. He's like, I'll see if I can get some of the stores to send their product over here so you don't have to go all over the place. And he's like, and I'll try to order more for you if I can. But there was a supply chain issue, so that was a no-go. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's fun. It's good to just talk with people because you don't know what kind of doors might be opened.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're mostly OA now, then?
Yeah, we're 99% OA.
At what point did you pivot?
Yeah.
I was doing OA while I still lived in Ohio. That would have been 5-6 years ago. But it was OA and RA with a heavy thumb on RA. And then we moved to Florida, and we did a pretty heavy RA for the first year. Like I came down and I immediately hired someone to work with me, and I was going to teach him all about retail arbitrage, and he did all the packing and shipping for us. And that was great, but I had to let him go. He preferred to be stoned over working. And while I don't care, you do what you want, I don't care, it was getting in the way of work. So I ended up having to let him go. And from there on out, I was like, all right, it's just OA. That way I don't have to have someone working here because I've got too many irons in the fire to go do RA myself.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So a lot of people, at least right now, know you for the OA challenge, right? Mm-hmm. So I got a couple questions around the OA challenge.
All right.
First, what is your most hated way of sourcing?
It's probably what I call the aisle by aisle method. You go over to Target, you pick a category, and then you just go through every single product. For some reason, it is boring as all get out. I would much rather, keep a product finder, do some reverse sourcing from Amazon. There's this one method where you kind of let Amazon speak to you, and you use some keywords and things like that to pull up products. That quenches the ADD in me a little bit better than going down every single product in a category.
100%. And so I do also have a follow-up question. So, here at the Doughboys, we're all signed up for the Chris Grant newsletter. So recently you sent out one about a book that you're reading, right? And you wrote in there, there's no sense in fighting with a dull, rusty sword. Invest your gold in a well-forged weapon. So the times that you're not teaching the OA challenge, how are you keeping your sword not dull?
Don't tell my wife, all right?
Okay.
I spend 5 figures a year in courses, consulting, and books. And I also listen to an ungodly amount of podcasts. I listen to virtually zero music. I love music, and if you throw on some 90s grunge or alternative, I'm all about it. However, I listen to basically no music. It is podcasts. I've got my Kindle open all the time. And matter of fact, I just hired someone today in the community to offer me some consulting. And I do put my money where my mouth is.
Nice. I'm curious to know how your library of podcasts looks like. What are some of the podcasts that you have in there?
My First Million.
Oh, okay. Good one.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Sean and Sam are probably two of my favorite people. How to Take Over the World is another one that's really, really good. It's actually it's Sean and Sam's producer, Ben, who created that podcast. And you want to talk about getting hyped? The intro music to How to Take Over the World is the best podcast intro I've ever heard in my life.
I'm writing it down.
Yeah, me too. Got the notepad.
The Founders Podcast by David Senra is excellent. He'll read a 700-page biography and then teach it to you in an hour and a half. So I just finished listening to Michael Jordan's, his version of Michael Jordan's autobiography, which was incredible. James Altucher is someone that I think you should listen to. I think he's incredibly smart and asks really good questions. Occasionally I get to listen to Lex Friedman on occasion. I think he asks really smart questions. He has interesting people on. And that's really about it. I can't keep up with too many other podcasts besides those.
I feel you. Yeah, I love Lex Friedman. The only thing for me with him is sometimes he just puts me to bed.
Oh,
and
he's got a
voice,
very,
just like
very monotone.
Yeah, it's like someone like, all right, dozing off here, but such a great podcast.
So, Chris, what's your motivation behind creating content yourself?
All right, so this is going to sound a little sappy. When I got started, honestly, it was because I wanted another form of income, and I figured, well, I could become a YouTuber. I could, maybe I sell some affiliate products. Maybe I create something. I don't know. It was a couple of years ago now. Someone sent me a picture, and it was a picture of their child taking their first steps. And they said to me, they're like, Chris, what I've learned from you allowed me to quit my job. He's like, it's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon when I'd normally be at a 9 to 5, but instead I'm at home and I got to see my son's first steps. And from that point on, that's the reason that I make content.
Because I was just about to ask. That was my question. Is like, are you making a podcast, or what kind of content are you in, and what are you looking to get into still? Because I'd imagine you're ambitious.
It might be easier to say what kind of content you're not putting out there.
Right. Yeah, that might be an easier question. There you go.
So we have a podcast. I have a co-host, Chris Rasick. We've got a blog, which we try to have one new blog post per week. I've got YouTube. I'm not so great at Instagram. I'm trying to get better at Twitter and writing, threads that are helpful. And then I also create, content for Facebook groups because that's, a lot of Amazon sellers are still over there and they're not on Discord and stuff like that. And then I've got a small VIP group that I run, and for that group, I've put together probably another 200 or so videos that are not public.
Oh, nice.
So what are two questions? What's your most successful content, and what's your favorite content to put out?
My favorite content to put out is blog posts, but I would imagine that YouTube videos are probably what get the most eyeballs.
Okay, I'm curious. Why is the blog? Why is that your favorite?
It's my preferred way to consume information. I will watch a YouTube video every now and again, but I seem to retain information better through the written word, and so that's what I like the best. I also think that long term, YouTube is great. It's a search engine as well. But I don't think blogging is going anywhere, and I also think that I don't have to compete with all the young guys when it comes to blogging, where they're on social media and want to be Instagram and Twitter and get big there. That's fine. I'll take all the keywords and kind of hoover them up from Google and get those folks.
Are your blog posts all original, or are you repurposing them from some of your other content?
As of right now, they're all 100% original. Now, are some of them influenced by other content that's made? Yeah, absolutely. When my guy gets back from vacation, as I do have someone who helps me with the blog a bit, but when he gets back from vacation, we are going to be experimenting with something called content at scale, which actually will take my YouTube videos and turn them into blog posts and see if that even works, or if Google hates that kind of content.
Well, I'd like to ask the same question as Josh, but as far as the tools and stuff that you put out. So you got your different tools, OA challenge. Out of all these things, which one in your eyes has been the most successful, and which one is your most favorite, or your favorite?
Okay, well, my favorite one is my favorite one is probably Rev ROI. That was actually, it wasn't my first Chrome extension. My first Chrome extension is something called Easy Blur, but that wasn't for Amazon. I actually made that for one person, and that kind of took me down the path of other extensions. But my favorite right now would be Rev ROI, because it was the first one that actually cost some real money. My first extension, Easy Blur, cost $35 to build, but it helped me form a relationship with my business partner, and that has turned into multiple seven figures, and so that's been the highest ROI. Rev ROI, I think, cost me about $1,200 to create, and it was greatly successful. And then we decided to make it free for everybody. Most successful, IP Alert has been very successful. We've got, I think we just rounded over 30,000 users or installs with IP Alert. So that's been our most successful extensions-wise.
What do you think has led to the success of your tools? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of things, but can you think of a few key ones? Like, I know you guys offer a really generous affiliate program. Curious if you think that's been a leading factor, or what are your thoughts on what's made your tools successful?
It's going to sound a little counterintuitive, but I think the thing that has made our tools as successful as they have been, I don't want to say so successful, but I've been in this space for 10 years and I haven't broken anybody's trust yet, and so it makes, yes, I have to market, if you guys are on my email list, you've gotten an email from me every day this week so far. Because we're pushing, a program right now. So yes, we've had to market. However, it makes the marketing fall on more receptive listeners or readers, because I haven't broken the trust of people in the past 10 years. So authenticity and actually like a servant's heart, actually wanting to help people, that's probably been, I think, one of the biggest factors.
100%. I mean, I know when I first got into the space, some of your tools were the first ones that I signed up for. And, especially, like you said, you haven't broken anybody's trust. When you're on Instagram, when you're on TikTok, when you're on all these platforms, sometimes it's a little bit transparent that you can tell that maybe someone's more out there for kind of like a money grab situation, right? But then there's other people out there that, for example, coaches, therapists, Chris Grant, that are making money off of these tools but are also doing it for the joy of helping someone else out at the same time. As you mentioned, the story of, you know, the guy who was able to see his child's first steps. Like, there's nothing that can replace the feeling of knowing that your knowledge that you passed down was able to provide that for someone.
Well, Chris, I've enjoyed this conversation a lot. Thank you so much for joining us. Where can everybody find you on socials and all that?
So I'm at Clear the Shelf everywhere, whether that's YouTube, blog, Instagram, Twitter, even the new Threads app by Instagram. I picked up that username over there.
Nice.
So yeah, at Clear the Shelf everywhere.
Awesome. So guys, go check out at Clear the Shelf on socials, and he's got a ton of tools. We'll link them down below. There's some great free tools that you can sign up for and start using today. So Chris, thank you so much for joining us. Viewers, thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one. Peace.
Thanks for having me, guys.